Morning, everybody. I'm Aaron Swanson, planner here at the Department of Transportation, and we're going to get today's meeting of the Vision Zero Council started. Before we do, I just want to go through a few ground rules. Today's meeting is being recorded. The recording and meeting presentation will be posted to the Vision Zero website, along with all other Vision Zero related materials, including meeting minutes and upcoming meeting schedules. All panelists will be responsible to mute themselves until they speak. Due to FOIA and public access laws, please refrain from using chat features or anything other than our ability to coordinate and help speakers who need assistance using Zoom. The question and answer field at the bottom of the participant pane will be used for public comment. Please refrain from entering public comments into the Q&A field until the public comment portion of the meeting takes place. Public comment is at the end of the meeting, and participants can raise their virtual hand to signify their desire to speak and to be recognized. To do so, you may open the participant pane and click raise hand at the bottom of the pane. Participants may also utilize the question and answer field at the bottom of the participant pane. And person comments will be prioritized ahead of those with the Q&A field. Quickly here before I turn it over, I just want to let you folks know I'm having an issue with Zoom this morning, so I may need to toggle in and out of the presentation that you are meetings. So thank you for bearing with me. And with that, I want to turn it over to Council Chair, Commissioner Yoda.
Thanks, Aaron. Good morning, everyone. So we have a packed agenda with some presentations. Aaron, if you want to bring that share up in the full screen mode, we have I know there's a couple members that aren't going to be able to join us today, but we do have a quorum. So if you go on to the agenda slide, Aaron. There we go. So we have technically three different presentations, two different topics that we're going to have today. One focus on impaired driving, one focus on Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments and their Vision Zero efforts. We'll have some updates from our subcommittees and then wrap up the meeting. So before we do that, though, I'd like to first just take care of the procedural effort. We sent out our draft meeting minutes from our March 10th meeting in advance. So just see if there is a motion to approve those minutes from any of our members.
So moved, Commissioner.
Thanks, Jim. Do I have a second?
I'll second that,
Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I see hands raised and hear yays. Any opposed, say no. Okay, so got the meeting minutes adopted. So yes, Susan.
Sorry, I abstained because I wasn't here last week. So
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Susan.
Thanks. Last time.
Down.
Thanks.
Before we start, want to highlight where we are so far this year in terms of fatalities and serious injuries. As of June 4th, we had 88 fatalities on our state's roadways. We were doing, we had a much lower number up until several weeks ago when we've seen a spike in fatalities, largely due to better weather, more people out, especially on the motorcyclist side. But we are trending higher, both on the motorcyclists, bike and pedestrian levels. Serious injuries, you can see we're at 413 serious injuries as motorcyclists, pedestrians, and bicyclists numbers are 74, 54, and 6 respectively. So hopefully the remainder of this summer we get a handle on some of the speeds and impairment that is driving some of these factors. So with that, I do want to dive right into our first presentation, which is tied to a lot of what's been going on the roads the past several years. For the topic this week, I really wanted to dive deep into impaired driving. This is something where, for all of the state's efforts on this front, what's most important to get a handle on how to combat impaired driving is actually getting accurate data to figure out what's actually happening on our roadways. So really happy that Dr. Jessica Gleba, who's the director of the forensic lab for Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection, is able to join us today because what we have seen the past 8 years or so is not just alcohol impairment, but a rise in what's called polyuse, multiple sources of impairment. And, in order to combat this and actually get at what's actually happening on the roads, it really starts with the state's forensic lab to be able to tell us what's in the system of the individuals that are causing these serious crashes and injuries. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gleba to talk through her presentation for us.
Thank you very much. All right. So I'm Jessica Gleba. I'm the Director of Operations at the State Forensic Lab. I appreciate you having me here today. So to kind of what I'm going to kind of go over agenda-wise. So going through a little bit of the background information for everybody to kind of get a better idea of, what we look for, how we look for it, why it's important to impaired driving. It is, we always think about the illicit drugs like the heroin, the fentanyl, but we also have to include things like prescription medications, even over-the-counter medications, because those are also something that can be impaired. How we do our interpretations, what we see, and what the next steps that we're taking to be able to provide that better data and better information for everybody. So a little bit about background into the impaired driving laws in Connecticut. So for the lab, we function primarily under 14227A. We also have regulations that guide us. Typical with operating under the influence, it can be alcohol, drugs, or both. One thing that we tend to focus on, and which is why we've made some changes, is at least in Connecticut, once you've hit the alcohol limit of that 0.08 for per se, you have your DUI charge. So for a very long period of time, we were not looking for drugs in those cases because you had your charge. The extra work was kind of just quote unquote going into the trash can, and kind of going it about that way. And moving forward there. One thing with impaired driving, it's not just our results. We've always said it, our results are like the end of the puzzle. We're just aiding and assisting the investigation. We don't determine impairment. It's all kind of a group together between the DREs, the FSFTs, and everything else that's observed. So the big thing with drug impaired driving in Connecticut is alcohol is established. It has per se limits, it has thresholds, it's very well studied. What you see based on a given level is pretty standard. For drugs, it's not like that. There's no universally accepted threshold levels. You have to kind of rely on the totality of the case as a whole. The SFSTs, the DREs, the TOCs, because it is kind of person by person, accident by accident type dependent. So what we're running against right now with emerging trends within Connecticut is cannabis impaired driving. And if you want to go to the next slide. So cannabis impaired driving, this has come up a pretty big one. Cannabis, and I'll go through a little bit more. Cannabis is definitely one of the ones that is very hard to interpret. One, we're a very urine heavy state in Connecticut. Cannabis itself can be detected for up to 30 days. So it makes it very difficult for our results in court to stand alone at all. You definitely need the aid of the investigation. The increase in polysubstance abuse, and I'll go over that a little bit more. The new and designer drugs. Unfortunately, if you look back 3 or 4 years ago, fentanyl, heroin, cocaine, that's what you had in the drug trends. That's what was out there. Unfortunately, that's not what's there anymore. I think up to now, we've got at least 5 or 6 different cannabinoids and at least 5, 6, up to 10 different fentanyls that are out there. And then just the growing demand for us to keep up to date and advance to make sure that we're keeping up with all this to give the data that's out there. As far as pharmacology goes, when we're looking at toxicology, we have to consider how it's absorbed, how it's distributed, how it's metabolized, and then eliminated. So that way, when we do give the results, that's how it plays into what they're seeing on the roadways. So if we're only seeing what we consider a metabolite in our toxicology, that may or may not have been affecting the person at the time of the accident. So we're looking at all of this. Drug concentration versus observed impairment, there is no direct correlation between those numbers. So if we are looking at something, you might see something that says 100 nanograms of X drug. It might seem high, but it kind of depends on how that drug is used, how it's prescribed, and every person is also different. If you have a tolerance to the drug, somebody, I use Benadryl as a good example. Some people take Benadryl every day, can function completely fine, no issues. Myself, I take a Benadryl and I will be asleep within an hour. I probably shouldn't be driving on Benadryl. So it's all up to that, and that's a big important of being able to study and know the information that's there. Marijuana is a big one with onset and peak and duration. Marijuana, we get it a lot. We have a lot of officers that say I pulled them over. They were using, at the time of the accident, we saw them using it. Why is your report negative? Marijuana peaks within 30 minutes of use, and it's almost like 70% gone within the first hour and a half. So, we always emphasize a negative report doesn't necessarily mean that they were not impaired at the time, which just goes back to that, making sure that the investigation is complete. And then we do coordinate a lot with the DREs and prosecutors to kind of explain that, and we are available to go over it. Just some quick effects, and I know the DRE has a presentation, so I won't go into it hard. What we're looking at is the reduced reaction time, impaired judgments, the motor skills, and then the crash risk. So the drugs that we're looking at, or the common ones we're seeing, you have alcohol, you have cannabis, opioids, benzodiazepines, and we have stimulants, and then we have the new novel and emerging drugs. So these tend to focus more on your designer benzos, your bath salts, your cathinones, the new stuff that is out there that we may or may not, that we are keeping up with. And if you go one more. So alcohol, like I said before, it is well established. We have a concentration to impairment level. We know it does reaction time, divided attention. We know the increased cash risk. But you go to something like cannabis, obviously you're going to have the attention, the perception, the reaction time. But cannabis itself, this is one more slide. The effects vary very largely on the dose. So we have seen over the last few years with marijuana, you would see a delta 9 THC or component in like the 3 or 4%. 15% was high. Now we're seeing 40, 50, 60%. So that changes the effects that people are observing, how they use it. So whether they're smoking it, whether it's an edible, whether it's an oil, something of those sorts, and then their tolerance. So somebody who might have been using or growing their own marijuana at 15 to 16% now purchases something not realizing it's 30 to 40 is going to have a greater effect and cause some issues. And the same thing with the challenges of interpreting results due to prolonged detections. So in urine, we can see them for up to 30 days after their last use. And for blood, it's a little less. There has been levels up to 7 days post-use, but they're definitely lower. With prescription and illicit drugs, you have the opioids, so your fentanyls would fall into this category, morphine, heroin, oxycodone from prescription medications. You've got your sedation, your slowed response, your benzodiazepines typically used within some anti-anxiety meds, so Xanax, Valium. There's also designer benzodiazepines out there now, and you can purchase on the street. They're actually using a lot of it where people think they're buying Xanax off the street and they're getting these designer benzodiazepines that they have no idea what they're taking. Those are then going to cause further effects that they're not prepared for. So stimulants, so your amphetamines. We get a lot of questions a lot on this, where people say, well, I'm taking amphetamine for my ADHD, but that can still impair judgment, things like that with risk-taking behaviors and overconfidence. So something that is really important to us as to why toxicology is important and then how we kind of work together. So we can tell you what's present. We can look at concentrations and try to figure out recent use based on the absorption profiles, the polysubstance impairment, but we're more of a support. So we provide the objective evidence for the investigation, and we provide the background and the data to support the next steps. But that's essentially what we are. We are the background. What we're running into right now with challenges, which is I'm going to go into kind of what we're seeing exactly and how we made the next steps. The no universal thresholds, multiple drugs present, the timing of the collection makes a big difference for us. And then we're often called to court for the interpretations. So a little bit about what we are seeing. So the cases that we have received, I will caveat this. We do not do the post-mortem investigation toxicology testing. So if anyone was deceased, that would not be included in here. But we do any surviving operators and fatals, and then anyone else that is tied to a serious motor vehicle accident or boating accident. If you go one more. So what we are seeing, so we, on average, again, looking at this, our numbers on this are based off of how they come to us. So I wanted you guys to have an understanding. So however the officers submit to us, whether it just comes in as a standard DUI, that's how we track it. So obviously looking at 2025, we only have 16 documented fatals of what we tested. But that could be something that changed after the fact, or it just came in on our paperwork as a DUI. So that's kind of what we are, but we're getting about 700 give or take cases a year. And in 2026, we're about up to almost 300 already just in the first 5 months. So the one thing that we have been seeing that is quite concerning, this is what stepped into our next profile, next like, big change for us was the combination of alcohol with drugs is one thing, but then multiple drugs being used together. So polysubstance abuse has become increasing over the last few years. So just on this in 2025, almost 60% of all of our cases had 5 or more drugs. And looking at that, we consider all metabolites of one drug to be a drug. So something like THC, where you tend to have the parent and then 2 minor metabolites that are also affecting the person, we consider that one drug. We didn't consider that 3. So we have been seeing an increase. In 2025 alone, we had 14% of cases that had 10 or more drugs on board. Again, a little bit of a grain of salt here. It is urine. So some of this could be more historical use than immediate use. We do have blood in here, but overarchingly, we're mostly urine in the state of Connecticut. So this is just a quick visual of some of our actual test results. This is what we are seeing. This is how the reports are going out. And what you're seeing in some of those, onto the right, some of those have cocaine, they've got heroin, they've got a benzodiazepine, they've got fentanyl, all on board in one thing. And then some of the cutting agents are in here as well. Xylazine has made a pretty big impact, which is an animal tranquilizer. So some of it comes back to what are people getting? What do they know they're getting? What do they not know they're getting? But we have been seeing kind of an alarming trend of more potent drugs. Carfentanil, it was big probably prior to 2020. It is slowly making its way back. We have been seeing more and more of it. Previously, if you saw carfentanil, you would assume the person had died. Now people are actually being able to drive their vehicles on it. So it is very important we keep testing that. Quick visual of trends. of what we're looking at. So you can see the increase in most everything. For 2026, it is possible our numbers are slightly skewed to the higher end, mostly because we got rid of stop testing, which I'll go over quickly, where we're testing everything that comes in for drugs. So we doubled our caseload essentially with what we're looking for drugs. So what we're seeing is a slight increase, could just be because of that. That's been happening over the last few months. But as you can see, some of the designer drugs and THC, we started splitting them out. We have an increase in like the Delta 8 THC versus the standard Delta 9, which has been increasing over the last couple of years. Consistently, though, THC tends to be our number one drug that we see, right there with cocaine and fentanyl. We're pretty consistent year to year to year of what we are seeing as our top contributors. It's just what else is present at the time. So what we have done, and we've been very fortunate to partner with our Highway Safety Office through a NHTSA grant. As of October 1st, we eliminated stop testing in the state of Connecticut. So one of the big projects that we worked our way into is we did some assessments, and in 2024, we had about 427 samples that were tested for alcohol, and 220 of those had an alcohol greater than 0.8, so we did not test them for drugs. So moving forward, those extra percentage would have been determined to look for drugs. So we have been looking for everything, and what we have been seeing based on month to month, we're getting about 50 to 70 cases a month, and about 30% of those are positive for alcohol greater than an 0.8, and they're also testing positive that which we have moved on, and about 50 to 60% of those are also positive for drugs. So this is a pretty good profile of what we have been missing over the years for what we are potentially seeing across the DUI impaired driving trends. And I know a lot of this information, hopefully, we're hoping to use it and work with Highway Safety Office to kind of see what else we can move forward on. The big reason with this information is you don't know what you don't know until you have it, and that was a big part of this project. It was a pretty large undertaking, but it has shown good results. The other thing that we have noticed in the next couple of slides, I've given it quickly, is October and March. With our high ethanol cases, we tend to see more prescription drugs versus the illicit drugs. So the higher the alcohol is where you're seeing more of your antidepressants, your cold medications, things of those natures. Whereas when you go to the lower ethanol concentrations, that's when you're getting your illicit drugs. That's when you're seeing more of your heroin, your fentanyl, your cocaine. I did consider THC to be a both type of drug. Since it is legal and it is by prescription, I don't want to consider it an illicit drug, so it's kind of in a category of its own. Same with things like pseudoephedrine or amphetamine, where we might not know where they come from. They could be a prescription or they could be abused. But that is a trend that we have observed is the higher the ethanols tend to be more the prescription medications that people may or may not realize do impair them and they shouldn't be mixing with alcohol. The last big thing that we're moving on with is we've increased our testing panel, which, and this might look crazy because this in presentation view, it actually clicks through it. So I'm sorry, you might not get the dramatic effect. So we've actually increased our screening panel through the Highway Safety Office grant. We have purchased some new instrumentation. Currently, every case gets about 150 to 170 drugs. Our new panel is anywhere from 500 to 600 drugs. Yes, there are that many of them out there. We do have the ability at that point, if it's still negative, to go and search a database of up to 10,000 to see if there's something new, illicit, or recently that hit the market to make sure we're not going to miss it. That is one of the hardest parts, is keeping up with the trends. What we always say, we're always somewhat one step behind the drug trends or the drug trade because they can manufacture it faster than we can identify it. So by the time we've identified it, they probably already moved on to a different variation. So something that's really important, and we've been fortunate with the Highway Safety Office having the support and the backing. Um, it is a large investment to keep up with a lot of this lab capacity between the updated instrumentation, the extra caseload, things like that. So we have been very fortunate there. We continuously train law enforcement and prosecutors on our trends, what we are seeing, what to look for, why results and things may or may not be consistent with what they're seeing roadside, and how we can kind of interpret that. We consistently update our drug profiles and our things. We're looking nationwide and even countrywide to look, what's out there, what's hit the market. Last month, chlorphines, I'm sure they've been in the news. Those hit the market. They started south. We got them into our panels right away so we can make sure we can see it as soon as we can see it. That way we're not behind the trend. And then all of our data is available. We try to use everything we can to make the evidence-based when it comes to legislative change. So if there's anything that needs to happen, I do know there has been some push over the last few years with staged DUI type things in terms of getting the drug data and things like that. But we tend to use our data the best we can to make that information possible. And that is it. So I have the key takeaways and let us know. If you have anything else, that's my contact information. Feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Dr. Gleewith. Fantastic. Really appreciate all the work that you have done and working with our Highway Safety Office to move towards the point where we no longer have stop testing in Connecticut. I've been talking about that for quite a long time, and sometimes people think I'm crazy when I consistently bring it up, but I'm glad Connecticut has reached that point because, like you said, we can't know what's actually happening on our roads unless we actually have the data to show what's in people's systems. So now we can actually target the problem instead of guessing what the problem is. So I'm going to open it up for questions from any council members. See if anyone wants to unmute and ask a question. While they're doing that, Susan, I see you put your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. This is Susan Logan. I work at DPH, and I'm also in the overdose and we do overdose prevention and surveillance. So what you said, talking about the toxicology, kind of really resonates with what we're seeing as far as overdoses, both non-fatal and fatal. So yeah, we have seen increases in carfentanil. We've seen increases in benzodiazepines. We do keep an eye on emerging substances as well. So a lot of what you spoke about, we're also seeing in not just in the vehicle crashes, but also in overdoses, non-fatal and fatal. So it's sad to see. We also see, many poly drugs. We also see, there could be up to 20 drugs in their system, at the overdose. So yeah, so it's really great news that you're also looking at this. And we actually fund the state lab to look at a lot of these substances. Do you coordinate with the state lab and what they are also looking for? Because we were able to fund instrumentation for them as well.
For which state lab?
The state public health lab for Connecticut.
So we coordinate with them in like what they see. We do get our results out of their overdose response strategy spreadsheets as well as the from HIDA through like the drug collection
Yeah.
checkpoints.
Yeah.
But we don't have anything directly related to like what they're testing. We don't get the seized drugs from them. We do get seized drugs from the medical examiner's office, but nothing that would be related to DPH.
Right. So the medical examiner's office, I'm glad you're getting that information. We just started a program where we are trying to get urine specimens from hospitals for non-fatal overdose patients. So we're starting to look at that. We're also seeing a lot of medetomidine. Xylazine seems to be going down as well. I mean, going down recently. I think that peaked in 2024, but we're seeing less and less of that, which is great news. So it's a lot of, things just going up and down. And like you said, it's just changing all the time. So we have to keep an eye on that. And so that's my comment. And then I also had a question about you had said that the drugs don't have a universally accepted threshold. So for instance, there must be a threshold for cannabis. Is that correct?
So there isn't.
No.
There are some states that use 5 nanograms per mil. There are some others that use 2. But there has been some conflicting or some issues with both, where a lot of them have gone kind of backtracked a little bit and said, well, if you have this per se limit, you also have to have X, Y, and Z findings with FSFTs.
Okay.
Mostly because the long detection time. So because you can see that 5 nanogram level for up to 7 days after the person last used, you could have that level and it's be old use, not recent active use.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask also if that was state specific. So you answered that
Mhm.
question. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, and Susan, I think our next presentation, Rob Klin is our drug recognition expert lead for the state, so he'll probably be able to talk about that too. But that was a big topic of discussion when they were drafting the legislation to legalize cannabis. Rob and I had a lot of conversations with legislators about our colleagues in Colorado and Washington who told us do not put a per se limit for cannabis because it doesn't actually indicate impairment. It's they are regretting having done that when they were first movers in that space. So but I'll let Rob talk more about that when it's his turn.
Thanks.
Dr. Kleba, one question. You had some of your challenges listed. One was the timing of collection. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I know that's something we've been trying to work on here at ConDOT through some phlebotomy work to let law enforcement have more quick access to collection of blood. But can you talk about what you're seeing as a challenge there?
Yeah. Blood has definitely we were a big push behind that as well of trying to get the blood in the state of Connecticut. So we have a 2-hour time limit, but you have a plus and a con to both collection of time. So you can collect it really quickly, and you still might miss the drugs because they haven't actually gotten to the complete blood system yet of where you're collecting, so it could be negative. But then if you wait too long, you've got the backside of it where they might have now started to metabolize out, and then you're getting them below. So we do have what we consider limits of detection as well within our testing profiles, where our instrumentation is extremely sensitive, but we have to then make sure that we're not falsely calling something of it's a background noise or is there any significance to the drug. So sometimes, depending when they're being collected, they could just be below our limits of the detection. But that's where we ran into the blood versus the urine, where blood's the better specimen, we were pretty much going to get it immediately if they've used it at least within 15 to 20 minutes. We can probably see it up to 3 to 4 hours. Whereas urine, if they've just used it, you're talking 3 to 4 hours to then see it in the urine. So you're playing kind of the game of on either end here. Did I collect it too soon and now I can't see it because it's not high enough? Or did I collect it too late and now it's metabolized out? So we do work pretty closely if there's any sort of, again, negative report to kind of explain that out.
Thank you. Yeah, I never thought about you could be taking it too early.
Yeah.
Um, any other questions for Dr. Gleba? Don't see any hands raised. Thank you. I really appreciate all the work that you and your colleagues are doing on this. It's critically important. So thank you for the partnership.
No, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Rob Klin, who works here at ConDOT, to talk about the Drug Recognition Expert Program, which is directly tied to the work that Dr. Gleba has been doing. So, Rob?
Well, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, as the commissioner said, my name is Robert Quinn. I'm the Drug Evaluation and Classification and Programming Manager, the DRE State Coordinator for short. With the dual team running for DRE Program Managers. And joining me on this presentation will be Scott Ford. He is the impaired driving liaison for UConn, and he's my lead instructor for a lot of the DRE related programs and training we do here in the state. Next slide, please. This is a little quick background on what the DRE is for those of you that don't know. DREs are especially trained police officers to identify individuals that are under the influence of drugs other than alcohol. It's a very rigorous and tough and challenging force. Currently in Connecticut, there are 81 DREs, and there's about 10,000 nationwide. They are truly the experts in detecting drug impaired driving, both illegal and illegal drugs. A lot of the DREs are heavily involved in any type of impaired driving trainings to testify as testifying in court as experts, ride training, SFSD training, so on and so on. So part of what a drug intervention does is they're trained to a 12-step process. A certain level of medical expertise to improve physiological and psychological effects of drugs. There'd be different types of categories for the drug testing through these 12 steps. It's a very standard and systematic training and evaluation process. The drug recognition expert is credentialed nationwide. So it's not a state credential process. It's nationwide. For example, a DRE in Connecticut can go to any other state in the country to perform the evaluation. It's very rigid and it's very. There's a method to it to preserve the authenticity and preserve the validity of the process. And everything's tied into reports and data. DREs are called, like I said, they're not only help identify the impaired drivers, but they collect data. Connecticut, we use ICSMA, a data collection software program out of Albany that we share in 9 years with our lab, that we share with other partners, to get the data necessary to improve our efforts to find out if they're driving. And they said they're critical in drug report cases, the expert differences of the testimony, and they really do help. They do help with the challenges that this drug impaired driving has been presented. So for legalization of cannabis, and they're even before that, if you have a list of drugs and prescription limits. So depending on the rest of the video. All right, so this is
Hey, Rob.
specific. Yes.
It's a little difficult to hear you. You're breaking up a bit, so I don't know if you can maybe talk a little louder or something.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. So this program specific, this is Connecticut specific information. Currently, the DRE program in Connecticut, which was started in 2011, has 81 DREs. It includes 16 instructors. This is the breakdown regionally. You know, the towns in yellow obviously have DREs. Some have multiple DREs. The breakdown is further broken into 63 municipal and town DREs, 15 in state police. We have a DRE that works with the DMV, one at UConn, and then one who's a court investigator. So we have DREs in 47 agencies. The actual DRE program itself was founded by LAPD in 1980, and it kind of started moving its way across the country. Connecticut was the 49th state to join in 2011. And currently there's DREs in all 50 states, include Canada as well. And there is some DREs overseas, but not that many. Well, the program has been growing every single year. This is the most DREs we've ever had. And like I said, if you see a town or jurisdiction that doesn't have a DRE, they can summons a DRE. We have a DRE call-out system in place that staffs can speak on more if anybody's interested. But we have the ability to get a DRE to anyone at any time of the night if needed. And that's why I like to stress that it is a regional type of program where we share the resources. So every town doesn't necessarily need a DRE, but if there's a need for one, we have the efforts to get anyone who requests the DRE, someone there to perform an evaluation. Next slide. So with the legalization of cannabis, they did put into law whenever you have a motor vehicle accident, a crash, and it results in the death or a serious physical injury and any sort of having operated. And the police officer has probable cause to believe that there were drugs or alcohol involved. That person, if medically able, has to submit to a DOE evaluation. Next step. We first have to submit the chemical testing, and then next slide, please. If they're not seriously injured, or they're otherwise unable to do so, they must submit to a DRE evaluation. That is law, and that's a per se violation. It's no different than refusing the rough test and the benefit test and everything. The drunken thing. And as another result, in order to train police officers in Connecticut to higher standards, A-RIDE training, which is advanced roadside impaired detection training, it's a level above your standard SFST training, which is your standard field sobriety testing training, which is your basic training all officers get in the academy. A-RIDE is a specific 2-day training class above and beyond standard training to help officers realize the effects of drug impaired driving and how to detect drug impaired drivers. That training has become mandatory as a result of the law. And every officer coming upon their third year recertification period has to take A. So we're one of 2 states, I believe, New Hampshire is the other one that mandates A-RIDE training, and mandate A-RIDE training for all police officers since 2022. So we're putting on multiple A-RIDE training classes a month to comply with the law, not only for the newer officers that are affected by the law in terms of their recertification, but you'll get senior and veteran officers that deal with a lot of DUI enforcement, but once again, higher level of training regarding drug impaired. And here are some of our statistics for year 2025. These are all pulled from ITSMAR, a partner up in Albany. And this helps us with data collection and these sharing with many of the agencies and partners that we currently work with to include the tax lab, partners at UConn, law enforcement. We work very closely with post on things just to make sure that we comply with the laws and often can get the best possible data collection methods, especially when it comes to the driving statistics. You can see there's all the different drug categories that were tied on by the DREs. What we're seeing also is a lot of mortality category cases, like Dr. Davis said. Sometimes you'll have medical impairment only. DREs are trained to root out people that may be going through some type of medical distress as opposed to being impaired. So that does happen. And you see the various categories in terms of what the DOE evaluations found, and those are backed up by evidence. Next slide. Now, I'll let Scott jump in on this and talk about call-out requests. We've implemented a call-out system to handle the comply with the law. Scott's been running that since its inception. There's some of the numbers and terms and like responses, what the situation was, so on and so forth. And to date, the calls have been slowly increasing as people are more familiar with what DREs do and how to get a hold of them. But to date, both Scott and I can safely say that in terms of the legal response rate, DRE was required by law. We always were able to provide some. So that is a major stressing point in the DREs when they go through training and recertification training. They are informed that even though it may be a standard DUI and somebody doesn't register the alcohol and they let you test, we may not be able to get the DRE out in the middle of the night. But if it is something that's required by state law, we've always been able to provide a DRE and comply with these laws and regulations. So that's been successful to date, and Kevin Scott for this is messaging reflects the urgency needed in the effective situation. But I'll let him speak some more on the call.
The call out system we use Everbridge to do the call out system. Whenever we get a request, the initial response goes through the hotline, which is a statewide dispatch system, and they request a DRE through the hotline. So any DRE working will get that message, and they can respond directly through their police department. If no DRE is working, then they will call me and I'll put it out through the Everbridge system, and I will dispatch the closest one available at that point. Up to this point, we've been about 85 to 89% accurate with dispatching for everything, 100% with fatals or serious injuries. And 2026, up to this point, we've had 93 requests, total requests, and we're 98% for this year. So we're doing, with last year's class, they've been knocking it out of the park with 98%. We've only missed 2 responses, and those were for DUIs. So we've answered every call up to this point, except for 2 of those. Next slide. Next slide, please. So these are our call-outs for this year. We've had 6 for fatal accidents, 6 for serious injuries, 24 for motor vehicle crashes, and 57 for DUIs. And breaks it down to the month and the day and time that the requests were requested. And again, we were 98%. Next slide. That's it for our presentation.
Yeah, so that kind of sums up what we have in Connecticut. We were fairly late to establishing a DRE program, and a lot of credit to the former coordinator, Eddie Hedge, who's still involved in impaired driving, training, and enforcement. He brought it here, and it started out as a fledgling program, and currently we have 81 DREs now, which is the most we've ever had. We just completed a school last December, certifying 17 additional DREs. To include an additional 5 instructors, so we can keep up with all of the requests of training. We get requests of training from multiple entities to include the school system, and there's a separate program there that we're going to implement sometime this year to include trades called DITEP, drug intervention training for educational professionals. So it really focuses on nurses and admin within the school system to identify students that may be infirmed. There's a lot of these joke obviously in high schools and in the area where even know how to travel it. And then there's another program called Edit, which really invite them from the employer does which allows employers to recognize some of the obvious signs of drug impaired. So a lot of our DREs are involved in multiple trainings to include a Green Labs training. We do a Green Lab a year. We don't expand to 2 years. It's a great training where we have subjects come in and dose with cannabis, alcohol, sometimes both. And then they put through impaired testing their students. The class is a very popular class, and there are also involved prosecutors that are invited to the time so they can understand stuff works on the road way prior to everything for the law. So the DRE program, the credit staff, he runs the Green Lab training. It's a very good training. We're one of the few states that do it on a regular basis. Where you can actually watch the actual impairment and then test the subjects right after smoking and ingesting cannabis. And a lot of the data we use there is going to go around and mechanic to get a better fit and we try to fit for the impaired guy in the income.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Scott. So I'll let council members put their hands up or just unmute and jump in if you have questions. But I do have one quick thing. If Susan brought up if there was like essentially a per se limit for cannabis, Dr. Gleba and I touched on that a little bit. Can one of you just talk maybe briefly for council members or anyone tuning in, explain the difference between when I've gone up to the legislature to testify on the issue of alcohol impairment and 0.08 is 0.08, like, right? If you're 0.08, you're going to be impaired because everyone at 0.08 is essentially encountering the same, not everyone, near like 99% of people are encountering the same, level of impairment, whereas drugs are very different in how they impact individuals. So can you guys talk briefly about that and why there is no per se limit for cannabis?
Yeah,
Yeah,
cannabis,
I'll let Scott take this one. He knows the ins and outs of,
um, alcohol is
all
alcohol.
that.
Alcohol is alcohol, and there's been many studies done with alcohol, and it affects everyone the same way, pretty much. Whereas drugs, if you smoke marijuana, and again, toxicology can speak more to this, but if you're a habitual marijuana smoker, you can have high levels of THC in your system for much longer. So if you test further down the road, you can have a high level of THC in your system, but not be impaired. So if you have a specific nanogram level, you can technically be over that nanogram level, but not be impaired. And conversely, if you don't smoke all the time, you may have a lower level, or be over that and not be impaired. So you may be missing some and catching some that you shouldn't be catching. So to have a nanogram level, again, for the habitual smokers, you may be saying that they're impaired when they're not, just based off of their blood. When if you do an actual DOE evaluation, you may say this person's not impaired, even though their nanogram level is above the quote unquote threshold.
Thanks, Scott. Then one final piece for me. Can you you touched on the green labs, where people come in, they get dosed with THC to exhibit signs of impairment, or so people can practice their standard field sobriety tests on these individuals. For those who aren't aware, there's also something called a wet lab, where you come in, people essentially get drunk, and then people practice their standard field sobriety tests on those individuals. So if any council members are interested in learning more about that, it's actually pretty interesting to see law enforcement practicing. I learned a lot by going to a wet lab and observing that. But can you talk briefly about the training that goes along with becoming a DRE? It's extensive and much more in-depth amount of training compared to other aspects of impaired detection training.
Yeah, so the DRE program, the DRE training is considered the pinnacle of impaired driving enforcement training. It's a very unique program, and it's not suited for everyone. Officers receive extensive training in the detection of physical and physical impairment manifested by drugs. The entire program was developed by the IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and NHTSA. Back in the 80s, it started out in LAPD, and we've kind of morphed from there. The training is primarily used for traffic safety, but it can be used for other public safety situations. So with the DOT, Highway Safety Office, and our DRE program, we're always actively looking for people to become DREs, and it's a 3-phase process. It's supplemented by multiple professionals, reflying instructors from all over the country to teach a class. It starts off with phase 1. After we go through multiple applicants, we interview everybody, we submit writing samples, arrest reports to impaired driving. They also submit resume type of application. They need to be endorsed by the chief and somebody within the court system. So they're vetting individuals from the onset. It's not a training thing, it's very demanding. Involves 3 phases. So phase 1 and phase 2 are combined days. It's a 2-week school. Starts off in the preschool for the first 2 days, and that goes over like your basic review of how the DRE program works, what's the drug categories. We continue to practice on our proficiency in SFSTs and with these examinations within the phase. And then the second phase is 7 or 8 days, depending on how we break it down. But we still last a total of 2 weeks. So that's not everybody to get the candidates and get the clinical study to clear. And not when you really bring them to the overview of the drug evaluation process and procedure, drug categories, drug combinations, behavior and vital signs, and they're able to take blood pressures, they're able to take pulses, they're able to listen to We all, something on a stethoscope, so we do basic, very low level medical examination as part of the evaluation process to gather evidence of impairment. After the conclusion of that 2 weeks process, the 2 weeks for the DRE candidate takes a written examination, and it's passed at a minimum of 80%. It's our standard given candidate. And once those candidates finish the 2 weeks, then we move on to the third phase. They actually travel the field certification site. So similar to a green lab or a wet lab. There's sites, I believe 7 across the country that accommodate DRE school. And this is where the DRE students, along with the instructors, will go and practice on impaired subjects. So these certification sites, all approved by IACT and ITSA, provide us with actual subjects that come in impaired, and the students test on them, and then this third phase completes their process. So the students must do at least 12 DRE evaluations under the supervision of a DRE instructor. So this is hands-on training. It's usually 2 students that we instruct there. Everyone's really engaged, and it's the most critical part of the training for the students to take what they've learned for those 3 classroom weeks and apply it now as impaired individuals. They must identify at least 3 of the 7 drug categories during the training, and they must be correct at least 75% of the time. Well, minimum 75% of the time. And all the training is backed up by chemical testing. And then upon that portion of the hands-on training, the final knowledge exam is conducted on the last day of field trip training. And that is approved and certified by 2 instructors. And that is usually an 8-hour test. Last year we had 1 student who took 12 hours to finish. And those are the challenges that we face in the recruitment and retention and in the school itself. So those are the 3 phases there. And once the DRE is certified at the completion of the field certification, we must perform recertifications. We need to recertify every 2 years, so they must perform a minimum of 4 DRE evals. We get 8 hours of recertification training, and they must maintain their grupo work, their data collection, so on and so forth, in order to maintain their certifications. So that's how the training works. It is very challenging and difficult. We don't have a lot of applicants because of that. We constantly recruit. We recruit on the right trainings. We recruit, at other impaired driving trainings. But it is a very challenging training, and I'll let Scott add anything that I may have missed about the training.
I think you hit it all. It's just a very extensive, very time-consuming training that a lot of agencies typically frown upon because it is very time-consuming, just for their agencies to consider.
Great, thank you guys.
The training, just to add, the training is funded by the Highway Safety Office through NHTSA, so federal funds do pay for the officers to be trained. So it will cover the cost of training, the cost of travel, the cost of instruction. The only thing the training doesn't cover is the backfill of any of these positions for officers that have to leave their departments for effectively 3 weeks. So it's becoming a challenge for some of the smaller PDs that are short staffed. But we're always trying to expand, the training opportunities and additional funding responsibilities to allow as many candidates to get training as possible. So we do have a funding source through the federal government that assists us in the DRE training program.
Great, thanks. Any other questions for Rob or Scott? Okay, see any? I appreciate you guys joining us and talking to us about the program. And thank you for all the work you do in especially setting up the call out program. Clearly it's successful like we hoped it would be. So thanks, Scott. Okay. Aaron, I am going to turn it over to you to introduce our next speaker.
Sure. As many of the folks on the council and participate in subcommittees know, the council has expressed interest in connecting what's going on at the local and COG levels with Vision Zero to work with the council so that the council is aware of those things, support them, and also let other folks know what's going on with Vision Zero around the state. So we have our first returning presenter, Richard Donovan from NBCOG, has presented to us in the past, and he's here to give us an update on Vision Zero, which is Universe Region.
Great. Thank you, Aaron and Commissioner Euclideo. And thank you all for having me back. I appreciate the opportunity and hope you don't get tired of me too quickly. We're very involved here with Vision Zero planning at Naugatuck Valley COG. And so we've been working very closely with our towns and cities. And as part of that discussion, one of the things Aaron and I thought would be interesting to all of you is a way that we're working with the city of Waterbury going into summer to try and address some of their most immediate issues. Waterbury, as our center city and largest city, is also the location of the majority of fatal and serious injury crashes in our region. And so it's essential for us as we work towards zero serious crashes. If you'll go one more slide. For those who don't know, I'm Rich Donovan. I'm the Director of Transportation Planning here for the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments. We are both the state-designated Regional Council of Governments, covering the 19 towns you see here on the screen, really centered around the city of Waterbury. We are also the host agency for the Central Naugatuck Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization and the co-host for the Greater Bridgeport and Valley MPO. And the next slide, please. Starting actually now almost 3 years ago, we undertook a Vision Zero action plan for the region using federal Safe Streets and Roads for All dollars. That action plan has been critical for us in determining a proactive approach to trying to avoid these crashes in the first place. Unfortunately, we know we have a long way to go, especially on the infrastructure side in our region where we have a number of older cities with older infrastructure that was not necessarily designed for modern vehicles. And so we are also taking a bit of a reactive approach at the moment, especially in cities like Waterbury and Bristol, where we have these higher crash numbers, to try and address some of those most serious locations first. So what I wanted to start with, this is the Envision Zero is our branded campaign around Vision Zero here in our region. And our Envision Zero hub site is one of the outputs from our action plan work. We wanted to make sure that the public in our region, as well as elected officials, had really easy access to the information that we're talking about, to the projects we're working on, to the strategies we're putting forward to address these crashes as they, or before they happen, ideally, or as they happen. And so we put this site together as a more interactive output than just a PDF report, which we also had to do to meet the federal requirement. But I would strongly encourage, if you have the opportunity, please check out the site. We have a lot of information and we're continuing every day to update it with more resources and information for our town specifically as they work as well alongside us to address this issue. And if you'll go one more. So one of the things that came out of our action plan was ways that we want to start in the field addressing these issues right away. We have a number of long-term strategies around infrastructure redesign and reconstruction. Unfortunately, many of our towns and cities don't have the financial resources to do that work right away, certainly not at the scale necessary to get us to a place with no fatalities or serious injuries. So we've come up with a number of options that we've put in place to help them in the meantime prioritize the investments they do make and do so at the lowest cost possible. What you're seeing on the right of the screen here, this is a roadway safety audit we did with the town of Middlebury just a few weeks ago. They have a location where a state road meets a local road, and some sightline issues and driver behavior issues on the local road have led to a history of crashes that we wanted to address. Through this safety audit, we were able to give them recommendations that they're able to implement themselves in a short amount of time using town resources to address some of the most pressing issues before we can talk about something like a more significant intersection realignment. It's an offset intersection, it's on a slope. There's a lot of geometric and geographic challenges to doing a really significant upgrade here. And so knowing that that could take a long time, we gave them some options that can happen right away. The other thing we have taken on, and this we've had some really interesting results from, and are excited to talk about today, is this post-crash infrastructure study. What we've been doing, and we've been piloting this here with the city of Waterbury, just given the volume of crashes that occur here. We've been working closely with the city's police department, the Office of the City Engineer, and Public Works to respond immediately after a crash and come up with some quick build and demonstration responses that the city can implement, typically on a budget of less than $5,000 in those locations, to prevent them from happening again. It also gives them the opportunity to learn from those quick build or demonstration items to determine the potential effectiveness of a long-term implementation of what we're talking about. So if you'll go one more slide. Unfortunately, what you're looking at here is the site of a very recent pedestrian fatality here in the city. This is the intersection of William Street and East Main Street, just east of downtown here in the city. East Main Street and William Street both are city-owned. East Main Street serves as a major arterial. For anyone who's not familiar with Waterbury, it is the primary route east out of the city if you're not on Interstate 84. It does end up meeting with Route 70 near the Cheshire town line and provides a lot of access to the eastern part of our region and certainly connections to the rest of the state. East Main Street does run parallel to Interstate 84, and it does pick up a lot of traffic, especially during evening rush hour or times when there's delays on the highway for other reasons. And William Street is a local residential street, as you can see here, at an unsignalized intersection. So shortly after that pedestrian fatality at this location, the police department reached out and asked us to help with a post-crash analysis on this one. And we're doing this now in 3 major steps. So the first step is we do this. We go and we do a non-field desktop review of the site. And our staff, along with the city engineer's staff, will pull out the things that we immediately notice as potential hazards, especially for pedestrians, but also for drivers in this location. We do this specifically because we know that there are going to be factors of the crash that will impact why this happened and how to prevent it from happening again. But we also know that other crashes at this location could happen just based on the infrastructure condition, regardless of the behavior that went into that. So by looking at the location first, without knowing the details of the crash, it lets us call out all of those things that we see as potential factors. Some of the things you'll see here, even though William Street technically does allow pedestrian crossings of East Main Street, based on the way the state law is written and crosswalks are established at intersections, they're not marked. And so drivers on East Main Street don't necessarily know to look for pedestrians crossing. There are no markings around where parking is or is not allowed. And so there's very frequently sightline issues of people parked too close to that intersection. And this is a common issue here in Waterbury, where you have these 3-way intersections because of the city's geography. There is no clear indication of whether or not parking is allowed opposite that side street. And often what happens is cars will park there, making it difficult for pedestrians to access the street, to get up onto the sidewalk or to get down from the sidewalk, as well as for drivers in that direction to see if there are pedestrians entering the street. We also know the striping in this location is poor to non-existent. There are no sidelines marked. There is no visible center line marked. The fact that there's a stop bar on William Street is really more of a relic of when this image was taken. It has mostly faded away in the time since. And there's no striping of the crosswalk across East Main. So looking at all of these issues, we come up initially with these are some of the infrastructure conditions that may have contributed to the crash. We then go sit down with the police department, the city engineer, and public works, and talk about the actual conditions of that crash. And sometimes this does involve a field visit. Sometimes it involves just the desktop review. And based on the behaviors that impacted what actually happened in that fatality, then we make some recommendations for the city to look at implementing. So in this case, we know some of the things we called out, right? We very clearly have a striping issue. And a simple maintenance project to get out there and add some extra striping at this intersection will help a lot to both narrow the travel lane, make drivers feel like they don't have as much space and therefore slow down as they approach the intersection, but also to better call out where pedestrians should and should not be. We've also been engaged in a really aggressive rollout of flex posts across the city with the city engineer's office. And this is a great location where we know that just by eliminating the parking opposite William Street, by putting a few flex posts in that location, we can help to really dramatically narrow the crossing of East Main Street. I left the measurement on the screen here just to show you. This is just about 45 feet from curb to cross that distance. Truly, there should only be 22 feet of travel lane in this location. And so by eliminating some of the parking space, some of the side of the road, we can reduce the total amount of time that pedestrians are exposed and also give drivers that feeling that they need to approach this intersection more slowly and with more caution. And with just those few changes, we're hoping that the city will be able to get out there in the next few weeks implement a couple of these items before we get into summer and higher pedestrian volumes in this location, and then be able to monitor it. Over the course of the summer, we'll watch to see, does this have a negative impact on the movement of delivery trucks or larger vehicles or emergency response in the area? And is there anything we need to change about the concept to make that better? Are there other changes that we know need to be made that are a more permanent solution out here? You can tell from the image alone, the sidewalk on the south side of East Main Street's in terrible condition, and certainly needs some upgrades. There are not ADA accessible ramps at any of the legs of this intersection, so all of those go into longer term projects. But given the city's ability to act and the resources available to them at the moment, those may not happen for several years. And this is why it's so important we're identifying some of these things we can do in the meantime to prevent the next fatality from happening at this location. For what it's worth, East Main Street, is the top corridor in our region for fatalities and serious injuries. We know that this is an issue all along this corridor and are working closely with the city to develop a plan for the full length of East Main Street within the city. So this location is a little different from others. But we know, no matter what, that some early action, some quick response, both demonstrates that this is something the city will not accept and will not allow it to just happen, and can make a difference in the short term as we work on a longer, more permanent solution in this location. And Aaron, if you can go to the next slide, please. So just to wrap that up, the other side to this is we want to show people in our communities what we're doing. It's really important that people understand this is not a thing we talk about, but a thing that we do. And so on our hub site, one of the most important pages is this projects page, where we're calling out everything that the region is actively working on to make these safety improvements. It gives residents an opportunity to see that the work is real, where their dollars are going, both federal and state, into making these changes, as well as where there may be a problem that they know about that is not currently being addressed. And we are encouraging residents to contact their local elected officials as well as us directly to help get these priority projects in front of us and into the capital planning process. And one more. And then the last element to it is all of this does not matter if there's no accountability for it. And so we as a region have really committed to reporting on our progress and reporting on our failings and making sure that those are public, regularly addressed, and that we're always willing to answer questions about them or take criticisms of the work we're doing. One of the ways we do this is through our progress report, the cover of which you'll see here on the right. So the document we publish annually highlighting our work from the previous year, the crash history and data from the region for the previous year, as well as the number of projects that were identified and programmed based on that crash history. On the left side, you'll see as the MPO, one of the things that MPOs are required to do is adopt performance targets around safety. Historically, we had always adopted the statewide target and just endorsed that and allowed the state to do all of the reporting. For 2026, the Central Naugatuck Valley MPO did adopt our own targets using the same methodology as the state. Not in a rebuke of the state's methodology, but more so in a way for us to actually report our own progress to our elected officials. And what that means is every year we will now have to put together a report to comply on the federal side with the long-term reporting and maintenance of these targets. And so our board will see every year the targets that we set for our region against the actual and what steps are not being taken or may need to be taken going forward to get us in line with those and work toward that the target of 0 by 2060. By doing this, we make it really clear where we're failing in this initiative, where we're making progress, and which behaviors we need to encourage, we need to continue and have our board continue to encourage across our towns, across the region to get to that target of 0 by 2060 at the latest, ideally much sooner. And if you'll go one more. So again, thank you for the opportunity to present again today. We always appreciate highlighting the work that our towns and cities are doing here in the Naugatuck Valley. We're happy to take any questions and certainly are always happy to answer anything additional if you'd like to get in touch.
Thanks, Rich. I think a lot of people, don't realize how much work the MPOs and COGs are doing in this space for a lot of our communities who don't have the resources, like some of our cities such as New Haven or Hartford, which have larger teams at the local level to be able to lean into a lot of these safety improvements and investments, whereas a lot of other communities in the state do not have those local resources. And so the MVCOG is playing a key role here for a lot of those communities. So I appreciate all you're doing. Any questions for Rich from anyone? John?
Thanks, Commissioner, and thank you, Rich, for the presentation. More of a comment than a question. As a person on this group that largely represents the disability community, I'm just a little troubled by the idea that things like ADA compliant ramps and things are less of a priority, or taking a back seat to other. I appreciate while there are certain lower hanging fruit, at least with respect to this current project. I encourage you to reconsider your thinking when it comes to things like ADA compliance, because at the end of the day, non-ADA compliance is illegal, and certainly, proper ramps and things can minimize accidents. I'm thinking especially times in the winter where there might be snow or inclement weather. Those are certainly things that can contribute to fewer accidents and fatalities. So I just encourage you to reconsider your thinking on things like that, Rich. Thanks, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the comment, and certainly don't want to imply that bringing the city up to ADA compliance is not a priority or something we are also working on. As we're looking at these issues, that is one of the very first things we call out anytime we see a location where a lack of ADA compliance is obvious.
Yep. And
Thanks, Rich.
And I know Katie Hedberg's on this call as well as one of our subcommittee chairs who leads the ADA effort here at ConDOT. So I know she's busy. Her and her team are still inventorying all curb ramps in the state. So it's a huge Herculean task. But I know here at ConDOT we're committed to bringing all of them up to code as quickly as we can. So thank you for your efforts, John.
Yep, happy to help you with any of your efforts as well, Commissioner. So
Yeah.
just let me know. I'm here.
Susan, before I go to you, I'll let Katie jump in. So.
Did want to share that we do have a major statewide ADA project going on with the COGS, and NVCOG is one of our first pilot areas that we're working on. So maybe at the next meeting, we can give an update presentation on that. The project did kick off in the beginning of May last month.
Yeah, it's a great idea, Katie. Thanks. Susan?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. And thank you, Rich. This is a great presentation. So I do kind of want to tack on to what John was saying about the ADA compliant. I actually had a similar question. How do you actually prioritize the projects? Is it based on cost? Is it based on, some of the legal issues around ADA? Is it based on quick wins or lower hanging fruit? How are they based? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something we actually are still trying to figure out exactly what a good long-term strategy for us will be. Right now, we are looking at those locations with the highest incidence of fatal and serious injuries as the number one factor. Again, we're a region with a lot of old infrastructure and a lot of infrastructure that needs really serious updates. And so when we see things like ADA noncompliance, we know that is something that does contribute to both the lack of accessibility, but also to fatal and serious injury crashes as people try and navigate their way around. And so that counts for it. We look at generally a state of good repair as well. We're more likely to prioritize some of this work in places where the infrastructure is overall failing than in places where the infrastructure is newer and maybe a quicker or shorter or a lower cost fix might make an impact. And so on our long-term, on the actual capital planning work, that is the way we're making these decisions, with the number of serious injury and fatal crashes being the top priority we're making a selection based on. As we look beyond that, though, like I said, we're still figuring out exactly, once we can make some real progress on these top priority locations, then we need to determine what are the factors that all go into that project selection. And so we're in the middle of that right now as part of our next long-range transportation plan update.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Rich. Any other questions for Rich? Seeing none. Okay, thank you, Rich. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. And with that, we'll turn it over to Aaron to run through subcommittee updates.
Thanks, Commissioner. Sorry again for the technical issues in today's moving time back and forth. A small delay here. So at the last meeting, or the first order meeting, here last meeting, the council kind of gave the subcommittee co-chairs some guidance, that they should continue to meet. That should continue to make policy recommendations based on their respective disciplines. But one thing that, Council Chair, Commissioner Theodo, and the council members present asked for was for subcommittees to kind of focus on best practices being either policy wise through recommendations or being implemented in other states in areas that we might need to address or have challenges here better. So what are some other states doing that seems to be working in the realm of Vision Zero, and to kind of within their respective areas to look at what are some things that we might want to report and ultimately pass through for the council to consider, also for the transportation committee, the legislature to consider in our executive units. So I believe most of the subcommittees have gotten together. They're going to let us know what they heard from their constituents and community groups are there at the meetings. And I'm just going to go right down the list here. We'll start with the engineering subcommittee, co-chaired by Natasha Couture and Charles Harlow. Natasha's not with us today, but Chuck, you're here for nothing.
Thank you, Aaron. So we did meet, our subcommittee met earlier in the spring and talking about what we want to do for new recommendations, or if we have any new recommendations. We're still holding with the recommendations we gave at the end of last year to move forward with those. Again, whether some of I can go through, I won't go through them now. We can talk about those if you have any specific questions. But with regard to reaching out to the states, so Natasha reached out to her. She has a group with the New England states, and she reached out with them. We didn't get a lot of, we got about three, maybe two or three states replied. They're just, the ones that replied are just getting into this Vision Zero. New Hampshire just passed towards zero, driving towards zero in July of last year. So, and they don't really have a lot of data. And Maine was the other one that replied. They don't have a lot of data of what's going with what they've been doing, but their strategies are, a lot of strategies are similar to what we've been using. Let's see, they've started to adopt complete streets policies. So they're deploying rapid rectangular rapid flashing beacons. I always get those letters mixed up. RRFBs at crosswalks and including illumination at them, like we've been doing. They've implementing leading pedestrian intervals. That's where the pedestrians get to go first to start crossing the street before you release the other traffic, the turning traffic, so that they'll be in the crosswalk, better visibility, and at the signalized intersections. But there's also a few that have not been discussed in Connecticut that they included. And one of them was bringing education on driving behavior into schools at all levels. And that's something that I think that would be something the education subcommittee might want to think about. They also brought up requiring education and licensing for certain micromobility devices, and I'm not sure, that might be e-bikes, or I'm not sure where that was going. I'll have to get more details on that. And so our next steps as the engineering subcommittee is to reach out to the remaining New England states and maybe start expanding into the Northeast, into New York, New Jersey, and maybe even some of theirs. Maybe we can start looking into it. I know Natasha has a lot of connections within the safety community and AASHTO, who are the leaders in safety in the nation, and start pushing for what they're doing. And so that, I believe. Oh, one other thing Natasha wanted me to mention Connecticut DOT's traffic engineering is updating the 2027 to 2031 Strategic Highway Safety Plan, which incorporates Vision Zero. And the plan focuses on developing strategies to reduce fatal and serious injuries, crashes in Connecticut. And there's a workshop August 26th at Central Connecticut State University to help develop the plan. I've attended those in the past. They're very informative and they're a good opportunity to get your ideas out there and to see where the state or the state of the practice is. So a save the date will be coming out shortly. So she wanted to give you guys a heads up what's coming so that when you see that email, you know, plan to attend. I think it would be beneficial because again, Strategic Highway Safety Plan includes all of the E's, right? So, and all the E's are on this panel. So that's who we want to attend these things. So that's my report out.
Thanks, Chuck. Enforcement next.
Yep, enforcement, we have Stacy Manware and Chief Harris will be able to join us today.
Was not able to. So first, apologies from Chief Paris, who was unable to attend today. His schedule is much less predictable than mine, so I'm happy to appear here and talk about the stuff that we've talked about. We had our first meeting earlier this spring, and there's a lot of knowledgeable people in the room, a lot of people that have been around traffic safety for a long time. I myself have been involved now for 30 years. So we have a group of people that can make stuff happen. And we broke down what we were concerned with or the concerns of the committee and carrying on the work of the committee that had been done before. And 3 areas of concern: nollies and warnings, pedestrians and crosswalks, and vulnerable road users. So we're going to look into those. We're going to, see what's going on in other states. Do they face the same challenges that we do? But one of the things that Garrett said during his comments, I think, is the thing that resonates with me about this committee is we really do have to stop guessing what the problem is. And I'm going to give you an example with vulnerable road users. I had no idea what a vulnerable road user was before I had that meeting. Now, in my position, I don't generally need to know that. But afterwards, I did some looking, and I found that it's a statute. It's a violation. It's not an infraction. And this charge was enacted in 2014, first charged in 2016, and in the past 10 years has been charged 24 times. So everyone might jump to the conclusion that, well, why aren't they enforcing it? Why aren't they enforcing this law? And I think it's partly due to that principle that Garrett talked about, that we're guessing at what the problem is. So we're going to dig into that, and we're going to really show you how it's not a law enforcement problem. It's a system problem, and I'm hoping the committee can really dig in and look at it not as people or positions, but look at it as a system. So I'm excited, even though I've been involved in this for 30 years. I really feel that at this point, with all the technology, we have the support of the commissioner. The Chief Justice certainly wants to see these projects move forward. So, if not now, maybe never. So happy to be a part of it.
Thanks, Stacy. That's shocking. So thank you for identifying that. I know that a lot of work goes into creating some of these laws, and then they're the fact that only 24 charges have been brought, that points to something that we really have to look at. So thank you for leading the effort there. Jonathan?
Thanks, Mr. I think to that point, Commissioner, if we could get an update on who is sitting on these subcommittees to make sure, I know we're all here on this group, but if we can get updates on who's serving on those committees. So if there's representation that needs to come from any of our agencies that's currently lacking, I think that'd be helpful.
Yep, we'll have Aaron send around the updated membership list. So we're always looking for new members of the subcommittees. Okay, Rise. I saw Katie was on. Oh, Stacy, did you want to say something else?
Sorry, I neglected to tell you one thing that I think would be helpful for everyone. We have started publishing by month a schedule of motor vehicle infraction traffic court hearings around the state. And we are also sending you links to our remote hearings. So I would like to see members of this committee, certainly members of the subcommittee, actually go and look and see what's going on. And we've made it as easy as clicking on your mouse. So I'd invite you all to do that as well. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
If it's okay, Commissioner, I'll just jump in real quick. I know the entire enforcement subcommittee is now receiving those links. If it's okay by you, we can add the council members and all active subcommittee members to that list. Yes, there's any objection.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Rise. Katie, I saw you were on.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So for our update, we most recently met last week on the 2nd, and a big part of our conversation, because we were able to have some of our UConn student interns attend as well, was to hear from their population with challenges. And we had a large topic on the micromobility with the electric bikes and scooters. And so that's going to be a big initiative our group's going to be looking at, and partnering with education and Amy with Watch from ACT, along with our fact sheets. So we do have a sheet that's going to go out on sidewalks. This is intended for members of the public to have I think it's either 4th or 7th grade understanding of the purpose of sidewalks and just educational benefits. And we've identified a few other sheets with automated enforcement for the speed cameras. So those more information will come on that, but it's been truly a cross subcommittee effort to coordinate that. And then we do have an item from last year that we were still following up on with the ISA and the interlock device in that current process and funding. I don't know, Alec, if you wanted to add on anything.
No, I think that was a great update, Katie. The one thing I would add is that one other issue that we're going to look into is about public education around automated enforcement cameras. Obviously, there's been a lot of publicity about cameras in various municipalities. It's inevitable that they come with some sort of controversy. I think I could say that I testified on the legislation that created it a few years ago in my personal or in my professional capacity, not as the subcommittee rep, but as for AAA. And I think the law provides a lot of protections. It's probably as many as realistically possible, but nevertheless, each community is responsible for implementing it and getting the word out. So I think we're going to be looking into, have there been any communities around the country that have done a good job communicating to their citizens about how these devices work? I know there's been a lot of work from UConn and others, giving best practices, but that's something we'll take a look into as well.
And we also are having our ADA anniversary event again, July 29th at Three Rivers CT State University in Norwich. So we have been moving it around the state for the past couple of years to hit different regions. But this year we are going to have, since we have classroom resources, we'll have some breakout presentations for what an ADA coordinator is, how for vulnerable road users, the ADA improvements matter. And I just put a link in the chat, but it could be shared out with the meeting minutes too.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Alec. Yeah, a couple issues you touched on. The micromobility issue. Massachusetts just had a big bill move through on e-bike regulation, but at the same time, I know we're seeing a growth in the share program. I think New Haven just rolled out e-cargo bikes for their share program, which is great for those who use bikes to go to the to go shopping. It's going to make life a lot easier for people. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And thank you all for bringing up the ATSD education piece. That's consuming a lot of our time right now. Liz Keys, who's our Chief of Legal and Regulatory Affairs, and our OSTA team are actively working on this every day. So thank you both. And last, education.
Hi, good morning. So the Education Subcommittee has not had a chance to meet yet this year, but we plan to get everyone together in the next month to kind of look at some of the things that we need to investigate as far as what other states are doing. Although at the same time, we're doing a lot of e-bike work as kind of a parallel project, with e-bikes coming out, and especially the confusion about e-motos. We're not only watching legislation as it comes through in other states and what's going on there, but also looking at and brainstorming how do we educate the public about how to safely use an e-bike, how to choose one, etc. So one of the things that we've just produced is a hanger, like the kind that you'd put on a door of a hotel room, that has e-bike safety information that we're going to be sending out to all of the bike shops in Connecticut. And then so we're looking at other sources, like partnering with Deep to have some educational pieces at trail locations, and other ways that we are going to educate the public. I was at the Connecticut Police Chiefs Association meeting last week, and they are interested in submitting something to school SROs about talking to kids about e-bikes. So that is almost ready to go to them. And as Katie said, I was on their call last week, and there's a lot of parallel work that we're doing that we can do together. We do have an ATESD educational handout that's been made by Watch from ECT. And, if people can circulate that or use that to build one that's more appropriate to the audience that they want, depending on what their audience is. So there's a lot of work going on, but we do still have to get that committee together to move a couple of things forward, which we plan to do soon.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Any questions for any of the 4 subcommittees? So I know we have, we're going to have a meeting in September and then another one in December. I think for the subcommittees, it might be helpful if there's a possibility of having a rough list of some concepts or recommendations, by the September meeting. Doesn't need to be fully fleshed out, just so we can discuss them in the September meeting and can provide some feedback. And then we can finalize everything at the December meeting with the final presentations from the subcommittees. Because next year is the long legislative session, so there's a greater opportunity for legislators and the Transportation Committee and other committees to take on larger policy initiatives. So I think if we can take it in an iterative process where in September we can hear about a list of some items, and then we can talk through, provide some feedback, and then in December have the subcommittees present on your final recommendations, which then we can incorporate into a final report to the legislature. Okay. The one thing I will I think it was Rise mentioned the ISA. So I think New York just signed a new law into effect dealing with ISAs for repeat offenders or super speeders. So that might be something for the enforcement and Rise to take a look at as well, because I know that's going to come back up this legislative session. So, okay. Anything else, Aaron? Did I hit it all? I'll turn it over to you. So. Oh, yeah. Sorry, you're muted, Aaron. So.
No, I think you got it.
Okay. So.
Yep, as you say, we have our next meetings in September. December. I'm always looking for additional discussion topics. So if anyone has something they can hear about, or has heard something that they want to hear about, they'll always let them.
You know what actually would be helpful to maybe we can get someone from to present on the trail program. Farmington Canal Trail has had some significant progress in the past few years, and then some other trails are being invested in this year. And so maybe we can get a brief update on, what projects are underway, how close we are to completing the Farmington Canal Trail, the East Coast Greenway, filling some of those gaps. So I can reach out to Mike Chirpak here at the department and others to present on that.
Okay. Well, we have that agenda today. We're going to get on building safety audit update, some planning, and I think we pushed out to September as well. So we have enough for the next meeting. With that, we can move to public comment, if that's okay. If anyone has any comments they want to share, questions that they want to ask, please raise your hand. It's all the time. That's from Mayfield. Prioritize in-person questions. Chuck?
Chuck has his hand up. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I have a comment. It came to me while we were talking about the impaired driving and all the toxicology things, and then a lot of people are on prescribed medication. And this had come up in some discussions, I think, in our group in the engineering subcommittee, should we have maybe a legislation, just a thought to throw out there, where the pharmacist, they all have the labels on them saying what's the implications of taking this, but nobody reads those when they get their medications from the pharmacist. So if it's something that would impair driving, maybe the pharmacist, when they hand the drug over to the person getting it, has to say this may potentially impair your ability to drive a vehicle. I don't know if that's something that we should consider as legislation or not. Something that's come up in the past, and I thought about it again as I was listening to the earlier presentation about legal prescription drugs and their impacts.
So we can, what I can do is I can ask. We have a good relationship with the Department of Consumer Protection. We could ask them what currently, the law is, what responsibility of the pharmacists are, and we probably don't need a full presentation from them, but we can pull some information from them to share out and just report out on briefly at the next meeting to help inform the subcommittees. Thanks, Chuck. Okay, don't see any other hands up or anything. So before we wrap, I will just flag for everyone. We will send, I know Katie mentioned the ADA anniversary event, which is coming up. So that can be shared. That is the 36th anniversary of ADA. We also, there's going to be a save the date going out for the Strategic Highway Safety Plan workshop that Chuck mentioned from Natasha Fatu here at Condot, but also for anyone interested, the ASHTO's Safety Summit is going to be hosted in Hartford this year in September. It rotates around the country each year. So Connecticut's the host state for the National Safety Summit. So encourage everyone to check that out online. The full agenda is not posted yet, but it encompasses all aspects of safety on the roadways. So with that, I don't see any other hands raised or questions. So I think we can adjourn. Thank you, everyone, and have a great summer.